The goat that's down your throat. El Rey de Cache, Real Deal Ray, Shango Ray here. What's going on? Uh, Thought I'd knock two birds out with one stone. Uh, Excuse the shakiness, but as you see, shit's in motion here. So, title of this video: Magickal Imposter Syndrome. Now, I created this title because obviously we deal with things from an occult perspective here, but imposter syndrome, you may not know what that is, right? But chances are you suffer from it. So, excuse me, shit, where'd that come from? But so let me ask you this: Have you ever felt like you don't belong somewhere? Like everyone else there is way tighter than you, way overqualified. Like, how in the fuck did you get in there? Or maybe your artwork, something that you do, maybe you're in a competition of some kind, and you have that moment where you're just like, what the fuck am I doing here? Many times it's described as accompanied with fear and anxiety, of course, that people are going to find out that you don't belong here, or that you're not good enough, or that maybe somehow you're here by a mistake, or whatever the case may be. Another example is you get a job somewhere or a promotion, and you just have something happens, and you just feel like you shrink, and you feel like you're not supposed to be there. Well, I've noticed something, and of course, number one, I've noticed it in myself over the years, and I still sometimes feel certain ways, but in the spiritual communities, especially the occult community, conscious community, I see what I call magical imposter syndrome. And the way that I'm going to describe it is, well, I'll just tell you what I used to do a lot. Okay, a lot. I'm not going to lie. I still have my moments. Everyone has moments where they doubt themselves, question themselves, and to some degree, I would say that may be almost healthy sometimes, just to take a step back and be like, but depends on how you do what you do. That makes the difference. It's the difference that makes the difference. So magical imposter syndrome. Okay. Regular imposter syndrome, a lot of it also includes you blowing up the other person's value and worth, and like almost putting them like on some type of a pedestal, as far as like how they're so much better than you at XYZ or whatever, like as if they don't have hella flaws, like as if, they might be hella fucked up behind closed doors in ways that you couldn't even imagine, but for some reason you edit that out, right? Well, magical imposter syndrome, to me, right, just coining my own terms here, this is what we do here, we create, it's this like weird belief that if you know your shit, right, and this is more unconscious, and it sneaks up and creeps up, a lot of times it's still in the shadow, it doesn't stick its foot out in the light, but it's there and you can feel its effect. So what it is the best way I can describe it, at least for me, from my experience, is, let's say you're known to know your shit, right? And to a large degree, you could say that would be true. Or maybe you hit a patch in your life, a season, where it just seems like a clusterfuck. right? Maybe you have a problem with one of your kids. Let's say you have kids, right? Or even if they're grown, one of them's having an issue. One of your parents is having a fucking issue. Almost died. You know, certain other things are hitting at one time. And there's this like critical voice that says, well, if you really were this magi sorcerer, then you wouldn't be going through this shit. You know? Does that sound familiar in some form or fashion in any way, or am I just fucking nuts? You know? Because I don't think I am. And I guess you could say it's an ideal, a very unfair. I'm always looking for, is she there? There's this little homeless lady, and she's really hunched over because she always sleeps in this chair over here. And she just hunches the fuck over, like almost puts her face in her lap. And you know, I don't like to tell my business and shit, but when I can, like, you know, or if I see her and I have something, you know, I like to help her out. I don't like waking her up. I feel funny because she's like an old lady and shit, you know. But I haven't seen her for a while, so I thought maybe, just maybe, you know. Anyways, but this whole imposter, this Magickal imposter syndrome, like, because you can do XYZ, or you know XYZ, like, to me it's this weird funky, like, false, fucked up logic. And I've seen it time and time again in a lot of different people, even when they don't want to admit it. And it's like, for one, I mean, this video, I don't have no magic bullet answer for you or solution. I mean, there's not just one solution for anything usually, but it's more just to talk about it. You know, I found myself feeling that shit. You know, I got a couple things going on in different categories. You know, and the point of it is, though, the point of all this shit is, though, another thing is, there's a tendency when we think like that also to think that if we have one of these clusterfucks going on, or we're experiencing what we might call a clusterfuck in our life. I noticed a lot of people, or a lot of individuals in the conscious community, it's almost like their inner child comes out, because children internalize everything, right? The way a children's mind thinks, a child at those very young ages don't really have the capability to say, hey, you know what? It ain't my fault. Mom's just, she's in a bitchy mood right now, you know? Or dad's just an asshole. They internalize it into somehow it's my fault. I did something wrong. I'm doing something wrong. I am wrong. That's what the brass tacks of shit, when you add all the zeros and ones and put your decimal points where they're supposed to be. That's like the presupposition is that I'm wrong, you know, and I see that. I mean, and I can see it really clear, because when you've done something so many times, you spot it easily, you know. That's why bullshitters can spot bullshitters, because they know what it is, you know. So, but I do see a lot of people, or having talked to different, you know, people while they're on their path, and there's this sense that like I did something wrong. Did I do something wrong? Is that why all this? Which goes back to another belief, like there's somebody out there gonna punish you. You know. Now there is consequences for all of our actions, and there may be times where we reap the consequences, although delayed, maybe, from previous actions. Who knows? Then there's another way to look at it, like perhaps this is an extreme growth period. And as new agey and cliche as this might sound, is this happening to me, victim mentality, or is it happening for me, creator mentality? You know? And the victim mentality is really steeped in all of us. You kind of can't get away from that shit. So you have to unlearn, deprogram, erase, rewrite that shit. And most of the time that you can't do that rewriting, I mean, you can do it at any time, but most of the time you got to do it when it's real in the field, as it's happening in real time. You know, no time like the present. And that's steeped in since when you're children, because when you're a child, I mean, what else, how the fuck else you gonna think, you know? But wrapping it back all up and shit, you know, it doesn't matter what you know, what you can do. I mean, it reminds me of a phrase from the Bible that I used to know. And that's another thing, is also religious programming of any kind. Because it's all the same template. It's just different colors. You know, substitute this name for that name. There you go. But it's the same template. Something outside of you is greater than you. Something outside of you is going to control you and either reward you or punish you based off of whether you do what it says or whether you obey its laws or commandments or whatever. So even if you're not really raised in the church, these memes, and that's what a real meme is we have these things called memes which allow us to copy. So when you're a child and you see, you know, if you're a girl, you see your mom use the toilet. Oh, okay. So then you go try and use the toilet like that, or, you know. But I don't want to, what the fuck I was going to say. But anyways, I did have a point. I know that shit. Oh yeah, but even if you wasn't in church, you know, it's kind of like woven into the fabric of our society, or was anyway, especially. And so even if it's not something in your real time, it can also be passed through genetics. You know, that whole fear of hell thing is quite a wager, you know. I mean, yeah, you can live or die, but to burn in hell forever, like that's, you better believe in this God or that God, you know, or that one over there. Because if not, that's one hell of a wager, man. That's one hell of a wager. You know. But once again, all that's based on fear. You know. Fear, fear, fear. And that looks tight. The track lights look tight. Somebody got some track lights set up. Not track lights, the LED track lights and shit. That shit look dope. Alright. But you know, I would say number one, if you start being able to catch that voice. I was watching this woman talk about it, and she called hers what did she call her? Martha Vader. Like Mrs. Darth Vader, and always critical. And I notice a lot of us who maybe grew up in homes where one of the parents was, or somebody was always criticizing you, you know, that's often, or the one parent who really never gave you your props but always told you everything negative, you know, and no matter what you did, maybe it wasn't good enough, you know. Uh, and then there's people that had decent parents and, all that other shit, and it's still there too. So it's not just that, but you're more than likely to, especially if you were like subject to criticism. But she was talking about how, you got the Darth Vader character in your mind. The Darth Vader character brings out the radical hero, or the what's that? Journey of the fucking hero. Especially like in the movie, the hero who doesn't really want to be a hero at the beginning of the movie, but by the end of the movie, he's fully in his or her hero shit. But anyways, that's getting off the side of the point. But she was talking about how she started creating her hero voice to counteract the Darth Vader, Martha Vader, as she puts it, or Martha Vader, or whatever she had said. But I thought that was pretty creative, because that voice can be very, very destructive. And yes, you can call that the inner player hater too, but I just noticed that particular pattern of like, well, I'm this and I'm that, so I should not be subject to the pitfalls and arrows of this shit called life. And it's like, I hate to tell you this, but nobody's exempt. Nobody's exempt, so one way or another. And even if you yourself personally are exempt, master of polarity manipulation, your family ain't. Somebody you love ain't. Somebody you love might have somebody they love that ain't. So to see them suffering, it's gonna affect you at some level. My point is, ain't nobody exempt, and ain't nobody get out of here alive.